So we're taking a deep dive today into Ikigai. You know, that Japanese concept, that secret to a life well lived.
It's really taken off lately.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It is.
And we've got this like stack of research and stories. Some of it is pretty surprising stuff about people who've like actually found their Ikigai and they're just, going for it. So are you ready to unpack all of this?
I'm ready. Yeah, and you're right. It's a concept that seems to be really resonating, especially, in Western cultures that are kind of searching for like more meaning and purpose.
Totally, right? Because like everyone, I think, wants to have that feeling of like, oh, this is why I get out of bed in the morning. But it's not just like loving your job or something, right?
You're absolutely right. It's not just about, finding your dream job. It's so much more kind of holistic than that. And in Japan, it's very much, it's woven into the kind of the everyday fabric of life, So think about it less as like this big career choice and more like, almost like a Venn diagram, where what you love and what you're good at and what the world needs.
Okay.
And yes, even what you can get paid for, all of those things kind of intersect. That's the Ikigai sweet spot.
Okay, so it sounds like it's kind of like this personal fulfillment, but also about like contributing something like meaningful to like the world around you.
Yeah.
So are there examples of this in the research, like people who are like doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are some really great examples. I mean, one group that immediately comes to mind are the super agers, so people who are living past 100.
Okay.
We've got like stories of centenarians, artists, even a sushi chef who has been like honing his craft for over 80 years.
Wow.
And they all seem to tap into, this idea of purpose, having this reason for being.
That reminds me, like Jean Calment.
Yes.
The woman who lived to be like 122.
Amazing.
She was like biking. She was like living by herself, just totally independent. I mean, that's just incredible.
It is.
So is that like, I mean, what is the secret sauce with these super agers? Is it all just Ikigai or is there something else?
Well, it's definitely, I think, a contributing factor, that zest for life, like Jean Calment clearly had, seems to be, kind of a common thread among these people. But there are definitely lifestyle factors at play as well. In Okinawa, for example, they practice this thing called hara-hachi-bu.
Hara-hachi-bu. That sounds like a martial art or something. What is that?
It does. It sounds a little bit intimidating, but essentially it's the practice of, only eating until you are 80% full. So it's really about, mindful consumption, like really tuning into your body's cues rather than kind of, just mindlessly eating until you're overly stuffed.
Interesting. So like a little bit hungry is the key to a longer life?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's about, being hungry all the time, but it's really more about just kind of like being in tune with those signals that your body is sending you and recognizing like true satiety, like when you're actually satisfied as opposed to just, continuing to eat.
Right. Okay. So being mindful, even with something as simple as eating that can have a big impact on, I guess, like living a longer, healthier life.
Yeah.
And it's like every choice we make is kind of, an opportunity to like align with our Ikigai or not.
Precisely. And this mindful awareness, it's also really key to another kind of fascinating aspect of Ikigai, which is the idea of achieving what's called a flow state.
Flow state, right. That feeling of being like so like engrossed in something that you lose track of like time, basically. Time just kind of disappears.
Exactly, yeah. You're totally in the zone.
Yeah.
You're completely immersed in what you're doing.
Well, how does that tie into Ikigai then?
Well, with Ikigai, it's about, striving to find that same sense of like complete immersion, that energized focus in your everyday life, even in activities that you might consider to be kind of ordinary, right? So
interesting. Okay. So it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to have like this super exciting, like job or anything to be able to tap into that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really not about, the external circumstances so much as it is that kind of internal state that you're cultivating. And the Japanese have this concept called takumi, which refers to like these master artisans, these craftsmen, who find like flow and joy even in very simple repetitive tasks.
Okay.
Think of like a calligrapher who is, completely present with each stroke of the brush, right? It's about finding that perfect balance, that sweet spot between kind of challenge and focus in any activity, really.
It's incredible to think that even like something as I don't know, like routine as operating an elevator could be a source of like joy and fulfillment for somebody.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that speaks to really the power of finding, purpose and engagement in whatever it is that we're doing, regardless of how kind of mundane it might seem on the surface.
Yeah.
But of course, life isn't always about flow and joyful work, right? I mean, what about when things get tough?
Right.
Because things don't always go smoothly. Right.
So how does Ikigai, kind of equip us to handle those curveballs that life inevitably throws our way?
Well, that's where this concept of resilience comes in, which is like so deeply embedded in Japanese culture.
Right.
There's this great proverb. It's Nanakorobi Auki, which basically means fall 7 times, rise 8.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about, having that really unwavering spirit, that commitment to just like getting back up no matter how many times you get knocked down.
Yeah, it's like a mantra for overcoming setbacks.
Exactly.
So how do we cultivate that kind of resilience, like that inner strength?
Well, it's interesting. Both Buddhist and Stoic philosophies, which, have been very influential in Japan.
Okay.
They both offer a number of techniques that we can use to kind of build that inner resilience.
Okay.
The Stoics, for example, they used to practice something called negative visualization.
Negative visualization. Okay, now that sounds a little counterintuitive.
It does. It sounds a little strange, right? But it's basically the practice of mentally preparing yourself for setbacks.
Okay.
So Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, he suggested that every night we should kind of take some time to actually imagine the worst case scenario.
Oh, wow.
So whatever it is that we're kind of worried about or, that we're afraid of, he said, visualize it, think about it, really confront those fears head on.
Okay.
And the idea is that by doing that, by kind of, going through that mental exercise, we actually become less afraid.
Okay.
And we're actually better equipped to actually handle those challenges if and when they do arise.
So it's like we're building up like mental immunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like giving your mind, a little dose of the thing that it's afraid of so that it can kind of build up that resistance.
Right. So it's not actually going to happen, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But if it does, you're ready.
You're ready. You're not caught off guard.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you're also less likely to be ruled by kind of, those negative emotions if and when that difficult situation does arise.
That makes a lot of sense. It also kind of reminds me of another concept we came across, wabi-sabi.
Yes.
That idea of finding beauty in imperfection.
Yes.
So how does that idea play into resilience?
Well, wabi-sabi, it's all about kind of, accepting and even cherishing the impermanent, the incomplete nature of life itself, right? It's about shifting our perspective so that we can find beauty in the everyday, even in the things that we might typically kind of overlook, like, like a cracked teacup, for example. It's still beautiful despite, despite its flaws.
Yeah.
And this acceptance, I think, of impermanence, it actually allows us to appreciate the present moment more fully, which of course, naturally feeds into living a more Ikigai driven life.
That's a really good point, because I mean, if you really think about it, if every moment is fleeting and precious,
yes,
then wouldn't you want to be as like, fully engaged and present,
yes,
and living with purpose in those moments.
Absolutely.
Like it makes me think of, the Japanese tradition of rebuilding the grand shrine at Aiz every 20 years.
Yes.
Like that to me is like such a powerful symbol of honoring the cycle of life and death and accepting that impermanence.
It is. And there's a beautiful, I think, parallel to that idea in the Okinawan concept of moai, which are these social support groups that people form,
right? And
they really provide this incredible sense of belonging and shared purpose throughout their lives. And so
we've got this idea of resilience, like bouncing back from challenges.
Yeah.
But what about going even a step further? Like, isn't there a concept that's about like actually becoming stronger?
Yes.
Because of the challenges we face.
Yeah, you're thinking of anti-fragility.
Okay.
So resilience is kind of like weathering the storm. You know, you're strong enough to withstand it.
Okay.
But anti-fragility is more like, you know, you're the tree that bends with the wind. You're actually growing stronger from the experience of facing those challenges.
Okay.
Think of, you know, the mythical Hydra. You know, you cut off one head, two more grow back.
Right. Okay. I like where this is going. So how do we become more Hydra-like in our own lives?
Well, I think, you know, one of the key ways is through diversification. You know, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay.
Right. Spread your risks, explore new interests, step outside of your comfort zone.
Okay. So diversifying our lives, like, you know, our interests or even our relationships and income streams, that kind of acts as a safety net.
Exactly. Yeah. By not, you know, placing all of our, you know, our hopes and dreams on one particular thing, we're just less vulnerable.
Right.
When we inevitably do face, you know, setbacks and challenges.
That makes a lot of sense. But, you know, stepping outside of our comfort zone, taking risks, I mean, isn't that kind of stressful in itself?
It can be. But remember, a little bit of stress can actually be a good thing. You know, it keeps us kind of, you know, engaged. It helps us grow. The key is, as with many things, you know, finding that sweet spot, that right balance.
Right.
Between challenge and comfort.
Right. So how do we actually apply this idea of anti-fragility to our lives? Like, where do we begin?
Well, it might sound a little counterintuitive, but I think a good place to start is actually by eliminating the things that are making us fragile.
Okay, so that sounds like a spring cleaning for life.
It is.
What are those fragility factors?
Well, think of it as kind of identifying, you know, anything, whether it's, you know, habits or relationships or, you know, even possessions that are kind of draining your energy, holding you back, or making you more vulnerable in some way.
Okay, so like negative influences that are preventing us from like living our best, our most fulfilling lives.
Exactly, yeah. Just, you know, decluttering your home can create space, you know, for peace and kind of, you know, a sense of calm.
Yeah.
Decluttering your life can do the same thing. It can create space for growth, for well-being. It's about being, you know, really intentional with our time and our energy.
It seems like so much of Ikigai is really about making those conscious choices.
Yes.
Choices that are actually in alignment with our values and what we really aspire to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about recognizing that we actually do have the power to shape our own lives, you know, to move towards, you know, the things that bring us joy, that give us purpose.
You know, it strikes me that Ikigai, it's not about like some massive, you know, life overhaul or anything.
Right.
It's really about these like small everyday choices. Isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Like what we choose to eat and how we react to stress and who we choose to spend our time with.
It is. It's about bringing that awareness, that intentionality to everything that we do.
Yeah.
You know, like those centenarians in Okinawa who gather in their moai, those social support groups.
Right.
You know, they're actively cultivating connection and shared purpose, and that clearly plays a huge role in their longevity and well-being.
Not to mention their, like, you know, active lifestyles and the harahachibu and, you know, all those things.
Exactly.
But for those of us who are, like, you know, just starting out, it can feel a little, I don't know, overwhelming.
Sure.
Like where do we even begin?
Well, I think a good place to start is just by paying attention, you know? Like what are the things that bring you joy?
Yeah.
What are you naturally drawn to?
Okay.
Those are clues.
Yeah.
Those are little hints, you know, pointing you towards your Ikigai.
Okay, so it's about like trying to tap into that flow state more often.
Yeah.
But what about, like, I mean, you know, what about the things that we have to do,
right, even
if they're not, like, you know, necessarily sparking joy? Yeah,
well, I think, you know, even those tasks can become much more fulfilling when we approach them with that same sense of mindfulness, right?
Right.
Remember that elevator operator.
Right.
It's about, you know, finding that sense of presence, that sense of purpose in every moment.
So it's not necessarily about about finding the perfect job.
Yeah.
Or having it all figured out right away.
Exactly.
It's about kind of like noticing the little pockets of joy and purpose in our everyday lives.
Yes.
And then kind of like figuring out how to like cultivate more.
Yeah.
More of that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And don't underestimate, I think, the power of small, consistent actions. You know, it's about taking, you know, one step at a time, and then another, you know, gradually moving towards a life that just feels more aligned with your own unique Ikigai.
Right. It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yes, exactly.
It's not about like, you know, reaching this grand destination. It's about the process of moving in the right direction.
Exactly. And as you know, kind of cultivate your Ikigai, you also become more resilient.
Yeah.
You become more adaptable. You become more anti-fragile. You know, it's a beautiful, I think, kind of just self-reinforcing cycle of growth and fulfillment.
So for anybody out there who's listening, who's feeling like, you know, maybe a little lost, or a little uncertain about their own path.
Sure.
Maybe the question to ask isn't like, you know, what is my Ikigai? But more like, what's one small step I can take today to live a more like intentional and fulfilling life?
Absolutely.
Something to think about as we kind of like wrap up this deep dive into Ikigai.
Yeah, beautiful.